Welcome to Podcasting in the Classroom from One Stop Podcasts, hosted by Craig Burgess. This series explores how podcasting can be used in purposeful and practical ways across school life. In this episode, we're looking at what podcasting can actually look like across the curriculum and how it can work across different subjects, age groups and settings. Podcasting can sound engaging and creative, and many educators can immediately sense that pupils would respond well to it. Even so, it may still be unclear how it connects to everyday teaching and learning. Does it only suit media-related subjects? Is it mainly for enrichment? Is it something that sits at the edge of school life rather than within it? In reality, one of podcasting's greatest strengths is its flexibility. It is not tied to one subject, one age group, or one kind of outcome. It can be shaped in different ways depending on context, topic, learning objective, and the age of the pupils involved. And that matters because schools do not need another idea that only works in theory. They need approaches that can be adapted to real classrooms, real timetables, and real priorities. Podcasting becomes easier to place once it is understood not as a fixed activity, but as a format. A format through which pupils can communicate ideas. A format through which learning can be explored, expressed and shared. Once we begin to think of it that way, the curriculum links become much clearer. English is one of the most natural places for podcasting to live because it connects so directly with language, expression, structure and audience. Pupils might create a discussion around a text they have studied, exploring themes, characters and interpretations in a more conversational but still thoughtful way. They might produce an interview with a character, a spoken review, a debate, a retelling or a reflective response to literature. They might script and record a storytelling piece or develop a spoken introduction to a topic. What matters in all of those examples is not simply that pupils are recording audio. It is that they are learning how to organise language for an audience, shape ideas into spoken form, listen to others, and communicate interpretation with greater clarity. Podcasting does not sit outside literacy. It can become one of the ways literacy is practised and brought to life. The same is true in humanities subjects such as history and geography, where so much learning depends on understanding context, selecting relevant information, and communicating ideas in a structured way. A history class might create a short documentary-style episode about a period, event, or individual. Pupils could discuss causes and consequences, debate interpretations, or produce an imagined interview linked to their learning. Geography pupils might create episodes about environmental issues, local places, communities, or global challenges, using the format to explain, analyse and reflect. Again, what is educationally powerful here is not the novelty of recording. It is the way podcasting encourages pupils to work actively with knowledge. They're not only being asked what they know, they are being asked how they can communicate it. How they can make it understandable to somebody else. How they can organise their thinking so that it has shape and coherence. That kind of work often deepens learning because it asks pupils to move beyond recall and into expression. Podcasting can also sit very naturally within subjects such as PSHE, citizenship and wider pastoral or enrichment contexts, where discussion, reflection, perspective and thoughtful communication are often central. Pupils might create episodes around well-being, identity, online behaviour, community, relationships, resilience, or the experience of school life itself. They might explore questions that matter to them, interview peers or staff, reflect on shared themes, or contribute to school-wide conversations in a structured and respectful way. This can be especially valuable because podcasting offers a format that feels both contemporary and considered. It allows pupils to engage with topics that affect their lives, but he does so through a process that encourages listening, reflection, and responsibility. Rather than asking for quick questions in passing, it can help create more deliberate conversation and more thoughtful contributions. There is also strong potential in creative and arts-based subjects, including music, drama, and media-related learning, where podcasting can sit comfortably alongside performance, storytelling, sound, and identity. Pupils might produce artist interviews, reflective process diaries, behind-the-scenes discussions, or creative audio pieces that combine spoken word, music, atmosphere, and narrative. That can be especially exciting because it shows pupils that communication is not only about information, but also about experience. The way something sounds matters. The way a story unfolds matters. The way a voice is used matters. Podcasting can open up those dimensions in a rich and accessible way, especially for learners drawn to creative forms of expression. But even beyond subject-specific examples, podcasting can have real value in whole school and cross-curricular projects. A class might create a podcast linked to a themed week or shared inquiry. Pupils might interview visitors, reflect on trips, document a project, or create episodes that capture learning across different subject areas. A school council or pupil leadership group might use podcasting to communicate ideas, share initiatives, or explain issues affecting school life. A transition project might involve pupils reflecting on their experience or offering advice to younger year groups. In all of these examples, podcasting works because it gives learning a form that can travel. It can move between subjects, between year groups, between formal curriculum time and wider school culture. It can support academic learning, but it can also support belonging, reflection, identity, and shared expression. Importantly, this does not mean every podcasting task has to be large or complex. It is easy to imagine podcasting as a major project requiring huge amounts of time, planning, and technical setup. But in practice, it can be scaled very effectively. A short, focused classroom recording can still be meaningful. A brief paired discussion can still support speaking and listening. A simple reflective audio task can still help pupils organise ideas and communicate with purpose. Some schools may choose to build larger projects across several sessions, while others may begin with something much smaller. Both approaches can be valuable. That flexibility matters because schools need room to adapt. A primary classroom can use podcasting very differently from a secondary humanities department. A Year 5 class exploring local history may produce something very different from a Year 9 group discussing literature or a pupil leadership team reflecting on school life. That is not a weakness. It is the point. Podcasting is flexible enough to meet learners where they are and support schools in using it for their own aims. So perhaps the most useful question is not where do we squeeze podcasting in? The question shifts. Not where do we squeeze this in, but where should this strengthen something we already care about? Where might podcasting help us teach, communicate, and engage more effectively? Where could it support voice, reflection, explanation, discussion, and pride in learning? Once those questions are asked, the possibilities begin to open up. A topic introduction becomes a short spoken episode. A history inquiry becomes a documentary-style response. A reading task becomes a review podcast. A PSHE conversation becomes a reflective discussion. A pupil voice initiative becomes a platform for shared perspective. A classroom project becomes something that can be captured, shaped, and heard. Podcasting gives schools a way of turning learning into communication and communication into something pupils can own. That feels especially important at a time when schools are rightly trying to develop not only knowledge but articulation, not only understanding but expression, Not only outcomes, but engagement in the process of learning itself. Podcasting can support that because it invites pupils to work with ideas actively and communicate them in forms that feel meaningful. So when we think about what podcasting can look like across the curriculum, perhaps the most useful answer is this. It can look like many things. A discussion, an interview, a documentary, a reflection, a storytelling piece, a review, a debate, a pupil voice project, or a subject-based inquiry. What matters most is not the label. What matters is that it gives pupils a meaningful way to think, speak, listen, and communicate learning with purpose. That is why it can sit so naturally across school life. Thanks for listening to Podcasting in the Classroom from One Stop Podcasts, hosted by Craig Burgess. In the final episode, we'll explore how schools can get started with podcasting in a realistic, manageable, and purposeful way. If you're interested in how podcasting could support your school, visit www.onestoppodcast.com or get in touch to learn more about our Podcasting in the Classroom workshops.